Sussex County historic marker, which everyone hopefully can get a picture of and take lots of pictures. I want to thank everyone for coming out to the station today on this cool day, not too hot, not too rainy, no hurricanes or tropical storms. Obviously, we had COVID last year, so we had to delay this a little bit, and it's good to see everyone out here as we get back to normal. Okay, so I'd like to thank some of the following people for making this happen. First of all, Chuck Walsh, Steve Kelmer, Josh Weinstein, Joe Mealy, and Alan Malaco, who was instrumental. All these people were instrumental in when we started the group, the Lackawanna Cutoff Historical Committee, many years ago. Sussex County historian Bill Trurin, who couldn't be here today. He's feeling under the weather. We have Deputy Mayor Virginia Raffi here today. Thank you for coming. And the Mayor and Council of Green Township. Thank you. We have Sussex County Commissioner Anthony Fasano here today. Thank you for coming, and the rest of the commissioners. I'd like to also thank State Senator Steve Arojo and Congressman Josh Gottheimer for their help as well. And to the NJDOT, Andrew Ludasi and Dave Cook for their support in helping us get the lease for the station, which I'll get into momentarily. Also, Siwa Studios in Ohio, they're the ones that made this beautiful marker. So thanks to them as well. And to all the people in Green Township, Sussex County, and fans of the Lackawanna and Erie-Lackawanna Railroad. Anybody who's interested in local history, town history, county history, thank you for all the support. Just a little background, and I'm going to keep my comments short here. We began in 2013 as a group after the Johnsonburg train station was knocked down on the Lackawanna Cutoff. And we wanted to do something to save part of history, railroad history, Lackawanna Railroad history. And this is one of two train stations that are left standing on the line, Blairstown and, of course, Greendell. And we were afraid that Greendell was going to be the next to be knocked down. So we stepped up, and thanks to social media, we put a team together, local residents and county residents and people in Iowa who've contributed. And that's how the group got formed. And the goal is to restore the train station. And we've had some lease issues over the years, which we're very patient. And hopefully in the coming weeks and months, we'll have an official lease. And hopefully at some time in the near future, we'll be back and we'll have a dedication to the station. We can't go much further past this area due to the lease issue, legal issues. We gotta stay close to the county side, the county property side here. But if anybody wants to follow us, Greendell Train Station on Facebook, or Lackawanna Cutoff Historical Committee on Facebook. And we provide updates through those social media platforms. And we look forward to having news in the coming weeks and months. And we look forward to seeing everyone at a future date to complement the historic marker. We will have the station at some point. So again, thank you for everyone for coming out today. And we look forward to a bright future with the station as we make this into a museum where we will show railroad history, local history, town history. Okay, so thank you again for coming. And the future of the line is looking kind of bright, the railroad line that is, as Amtrak has expressed interest in going to Scranton, Pennsylvania, which would mean it would be coming through here. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Chuck Walsh for not the history part of it, but possibly the future part of it. So Chuck, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you, Keith. I'll give you actually a little bit of a real quick rundown of, actually there are two projects we're talking about. One is New Jersey Transit, which I think for anyone who's been following this has been going on for a long time. That's the Andover, the 7 miles between Port Morris and Andover. We're being told that that project will pick up again in the fall, in October. Roosevelt Tunnel specifically, that's a 2-year project, so as a result, that's going to be really the biggest project for that 7 miles. What has really gained a lot of traction over the past few months has been the remainder of the line from Andover to the connection with the folks in Pennsylvania as part of the Amtrak New York to Scranton route. We're being told that that's going to be something that's going to happen. I can't really give you all the details, but at this point it looks very positive. We can have a little bit of question and answer after this, just if you have any specific questions about that. Interestingly enough, we have had a bit of press coverage over the past few, well, actually a month or two. First from Reuters, who did a video, and I appeared in the video, and a few folks over in Pennsylvania did. Well, the folks from MSNBC saw the Reuters video, and they contacted the folks over in Pennsylvania, and well, long story short, they've put together another video, it's I think 1 minute and 45 seconds, which is going to hit their website on Monday or Tuesday, so look forward to that. What else did I want to talk about? That's basically it. I don't know if you have any questions or any specific questions about the New Jersey Transit project or Amtrak or anything else here, and I'll defer to you about any questions about the station. Just yell them out. Anything in specific you can think of. Okay, I'll ask a question. I'll get it. You're probably wondering, okay, if Amtrak comes in, how soon? Well, we're getting, if we read the tea leaves, if you, I'm not going to give you the whole background, but Amtrak announced on May 27th, they put together a map. They had a map from last year, but they actually updated that map with specific stations on the map, and I'm talking now specifically about New York to Scranton. The stations would be, well, New York Penn Station, New York Broad Street, Summit, Morristown, Dover, Blairstown, and then in Pennsylvania it would be East Stroudsburg, Mount Pocono, maybe Tobyhanna, and then Scranton. But the question is, well, when would that happen? The original announcement from last year said 2035 for all the different projects. I don't know that all the 39 projects that Amtrak has identified, the new ones, will actually happen. But I'll put it this way, what I'm being told that this project will happen sooner than 2035. And actually probably a lot sooner than 2035. But we will probably find out more about that within, maybe even within the next few weeks. And I'll just kind of leave it at that, because I feel like it's, there's some things going on behind the scenes which I think will emerge fairly soon. I think that's the way to put that. Okay, I'm not going to keep asking questions.
What's the target for resumption to Andover? If it's 2 years for Roosevelt Tunnel construction, then...
Still 2026. So that begs the question, could this project open at about the same time? I don't know. Maybe. But I haven't heard anything different than that. You would think that if they're going to start on Roosevelt Tunnel this year, and it's going to take 2 years, would you do that and then just let it sit for another 3 or so, 4 years? I don't know. New Jersey Transit is a difficult one to figure out, so I'm not even gonna try to describe what they're gonna do, what their plans are. But the positive part about it is that they're actually moving forward. So we'll take that as a positive thing, and then just hopefully that it'll keep going. Particularly if this part is actually, it's clear that this is really going to happen.
I have a question, Chuck. Will transit be offering commuter service west of Andover? Or
That's an interesting question. It's certainly not. I think that's an open question.
Okay.
Is it possible? It certainly is possible. I don't think there's anything really. I think it's a little early to be talking about that. And now that you mentioned that, I should also mention that I would say it's a proposal, but people are talking about the extension of service not only to Scranton, of course, because that's Amtrak's project that they've actually put it on a map, but there's talk about extending beyond there, possibly Binghamton, Syracuse, Elmira. We don't know. That one's going to be something that's going to, I think that if you talk about phase one being Andover, this being phase two to Scranton, anything beyond Scranton would be phase three. When that occurs, who knows? But there is definitely discussion about that. But that wasn't your question, I know. But it did,
Well, thank you.
But as far as New Jersey Transit, we don't know. That's once you put the tracks down, it's possible,
Yeah.
sure.
Okay, thank you.
One question. I hear people talk about once you put the tracks down, there's a possibility that freight could run on those tracks. Could you speak to that?
Sure. And I've asked this question of railroaders. I'll give a plug to my YouTube channel because I've actually interviewed railroaders about this and I've asked them that specific question. And the thing is that because of the changes that have been made to the railroad east of here, I'm going to say east of here, but when we're talking about Dover east, the route that existed that freight trains ran over the cutoff in years gone by, that doesn't exist anymore. In addition, you have the electrified territory where you have overhead wires that the trains get their electricity from, the electric trains. That restricts the height of cars to, I think it's 15 feet, 16 feet, and most freight trains now are a minimum of 17 feet, so they're not going to fit. So anyway, long story short, it doesn't look like it's in the cards. I know that people have said, well, what about the trains over in Pennsylvania? Would they run them out here? Well, there really wouldn't be any reason for that. All the routes that exist now have existed for 40 years without the cutoff. So why would you if the cutoff were to go back, why would they automatically start running freights over them? So I'd say the likelihood of certainly anything like the times gone past where you'd have the 150 car freight trains, just don't see that being in the cards. I don't even see local freight as being a possibility. I don't really see that. So to answer your question, the likelihood of freight is really, really remote, and that's being perhaps generous. I just don't really see it.
May I ask a second question?
Sure.
Doubleton. What's the sound difference in terms of for people that live right next to the tracks? People didn't expect this to ever happen again, even though it was in the cards. So
There are a lot of people who were supporters who didn't really believe, maybe and still don't believe it's going to happen.
yeah, so they built their homes very close to the road, very close to the right of way. What is the sound if it's freight going down those tracks compared to an Amtrak train going down those tracks? What is that? What's the sound difference?
Well, freight would be more prolonged, certainly. But the thing is that if you're talking about noise level, probably freight you're more dealing with the noise from the locomotives, especially if you're going uphill. That's not an issue here, I don't think. I don't think you're going to hear that. The other thing is that back in the day, you had what they call jointed rail, which is where you get the clickety-clack type of thing. They're not using that anymore. So it's the continuously welded rail, which is quite silent. I know, and I think we've had this discussion. I grew up in a house in South Orange that was very close, I'll just put it that way, to the railroad. And when they installed the continuously welded rail, it made a huge difference. You didn't get the rumbling. The trains actually became, I'd almost say, silent. Yeah, you'd hear them, but you really don't notice them. And I think that would be something we've also talked about, the possibility of doing an Operation Lifesaver type of program down the road where people are made aware of the fact that, well, first of all, you shouldn't walk on tracks, period. But when they become active, the trains actually, not only do they move faster, but they move much quieter than you actually think they do. And as a result, I think that's something we're going to have to, at some point, deal with. But is there going to be some degree of noise? No, they're not totally silent, certainly. But like an Amtrak train, the amount of time it's going to take to go past the house is probably a few seconds. You know, it's not a prolonged thing like a freight train could go on for minutes. So, yeah. But I grew up, so I'd say you get used to it. But I think it's gotten better over the years because the locomotives have gotten quieter, and the actual riding of the trains past houses has gotten quieter over the years. But you know, if someone buys the house, and I've heard this story before, where a real estate agent said, "Oh, the train's never going to come back." Yeah, well. Oh, you're welcome. In fact, Hank Akis and I were just discussing about that, and I'm doing a little further research, but there are going to be two crossings on the cutoff. One is in that's considered Stanhope, Hopatcon near Port Morris, and this here, neither of which existed previously. The one in Stanhope is projected to have what they call quad gates. Most grade crossings only have one gate on this side and one gate on this side. This is going to have gates on both sides, on both ends, so there's no way for cars to do one of these. As a result, that would allow them to have what they call a quiet zone. The locomotive would not have to blow its horn to cross the grade crossing. I'm presuming, I don't know for a fact, because this is, we're still, getting ahead of ourselves in a sense, that they would do the same thing here. So they wouldn't have to blow the horn for this particular crossing. I mean, the only time I would think that they're going to blow for anything would be that if, let's say, there's a trespasser, like somebody who's near the tracks or on the tracks, they're going to blow their horn. I mean, they were required to do that. But the thing is that under normal circumstances, grade crossings would have that, but I think I don't know that's specifically the plan, but I think that's probably what they're going to do here.
Thank you.
What do you think the cost is gonna be?
Of which, what are we talking about?
From Andover?
I can only go by what has already been determined. I know people hate studies and they ridicule them, say, "Oh, another study." But I can answer your question because there has been a study that was released at the beginning of 2020, done by the folks over in Pennsylvania, and they're talking about from Andover to the Water Gap for being $289 million for that. Now, that's not the exact thing that's going to happen because when they did that study, Amtrak had not announced that it was going to come here. That was really going to be a quote-unquote New Jersey Transit project. So, I mean, it's going to be probably more than that, but there's going to be more done than just putting the track back, between those 2 points. It sounds like a lot of money, but, there's sometimes you'd be surprised how much these projects then cost, and this is not really that bad. I know it's not like $300 million. Yeah, that's chump change. No, it's not. I understand that, but to do any kind of project like this costs money, especially when the tracks are gone. That increased the cost somewhat, but it's been a long process, and we've gotten to the point where, well, hey, we can do that. And by the way, if you're asking, specifically, or you didn't ask this question, but I'll answer it anyway, is that the two viaducts, the Delaware River Viaduct is $54 million, and I think they're talking $16 million for the Paulinsko Viaduct. So those would be basically brand new when they finish for that job.
And would it be high speed?
I know this question came up as well. I'll just say this. I would say what was projected between Port Morris and Andover was 70 miles an hour. I suspect that the section between Andover and the Delaware River would probably be 80 miles an hour. That's my guess. It's a little early to. That's what it was in the past. If you go back to it, if you look at a timetable of an employee timetable from the 1940s, I have one that sits on my shelf and it's falling apart, but it's an old thing. The speed limit on this line was 80 miles an hour at that point. So would it makes sense even with the more modern construction, it'd probably be 80 miles an hour. I don't think they go higher than that, but that's really up to the Amtrak. But I think that's probably what it would be. But you know, it was built for that.
Is it gonna be single or double track?
As far as I'm aware, it would be single with sidings, which that hasn't been determined. I doubt it would be double track, but once again, that hasn't been determined yet.
And how far will New Jersey Transit be down?
Andover is as far as they're at least at this point planning. But to Joe's question, I mean, could they run further? Yeah, it's possible, but I don't. There's no. These are questions that are probably going to emerge at some point officially, but right now we don't know. But I would say, sure, it's possible they could run further than Andover.
You're gonna make money.
Well, there's going to be some work that's going to have to be done to promote this service. I don't think there's any doubt about it. There will be a build it and they come type of thing. There's going to be a commuter aspect, but it's also, there's going to be, I'll call it recreational or passenger service for people who are just, you know, going day trips back and forth, you know, so.
Chuck, hasn't Larry Malski done some research on what the pent-up demand is regarding commuters in Pennsylvania trying to go to New York and vacationers in New York trying to get to the Poconos?
They have looked at that. Amtrak, we don't know. This question's also come up, and I don't have the real good answer for you about how this is going to play out, but I would imagine that Amtrak is going to be looking at ridership. I think they already have some estimates, but I don't know. I don't know exactly what kind of data they have on this, so I can't really speak to that. But once again, it's more than just commuter, because I think in the past we've always, with this project, it's really been thought of as a commuter line. And historically, yes, there were commuters. There were people who commuted from Blairstown. There were people who commuted from Johnsonburg, you know, amazingly enough. People who commuted from East Stroudsburg. But this is going to be more than that. It's going to be, you're going to have the off-peak, the people are going to go into Madison Square Garden to see, you know, a basketball game. People are going to go west to, I don't know, see Steamtown, for example. All that's going to be possible with this. And I think there's still some things which will emerge as, you know, once this becomes more real, then you'll see, I think, other projects will start to emerge that will complement this, because that you say, well, you know, it's been abandoned for 50 years, and, you know, how is that going to work? You'd be surprised. I think there is a lot of pent-up demand that exists, and we're going to find that out.
Is there a time frame on the rehabilitation of the two viaducts?
I don't know about the time frame for the viaducts. I would say I don't know. I don't think I want to even guesstimate, but I would think that they would be the big ticket items, I would think.
Right.
The laying track and clearing the right of way and so forth. That's probably not the biggest, you know, time waster, if you will. I would think, yeah, but
The structural.
I don't want to guess, but you know, it's a few years, a couple of years, I would say. But you know, that's a guess. I'm not a civil engineer, so I'm really the wrong person to be guessing about that. But that would be like a ballpark figure, I would think.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Has Amtrak proposed like a projection on how many trains are going to run through a day, and with that, with New Jersey Transit running too, do they know what the workaround around Andover is going to be if like New Jersey Transit trains in Andover and an Amtrak train's coming?
I think there's going to be, if memory serves, don't quote me. I think there was going to be a siding at Andover anyway. And to your point, yes, there would be. There have to be additional sidings, I would think. I'm sorry. I lost my train of thought. What was the rest of your question?
Do they know how many trains Amtrak will be
Sorry.
utilizing?
Yes. They're saying 3 in each direction. So they're saying morning. I've heard this. I don't have anything relating or resembling an actual schedule. I'm hearing morning, afternoon, evening, but exactly I don't know. So it'd be 3 eastbound, 3 westbound.
On the viaducts, the historic value of the viaducts, where do they fit into
actually, the whole cutoff is a historic transportation corridor. It has that designation. I don't know as an individual item, if you will, big items as they are, how that would work. That would be up to like either Amtrak, New Jersey Transit, because New Jersey Transit has a group that actually is, I think, devoted to that, or they handle the historic aspect. So I don't know. That's a good, interesting question. Could they be put on the state or national registers for historic places? It's possible. I don't know. It's an interesting question. That could happen. I wouldn't rule that out entirely, certainly. I've exhausted all your questions. Okay. Keith, I want to call out one person though who is really, I think what you see here today, and if anyone remembers even just a few years ago what this area looked like, you couldn't see this station from the road. And the person I want to thank because he's been the one who's really been doing the lion's share of the work, and he's every so often got us here and a bunch of others help, but it's Steve Kelmer. And I really want to thank Steve. And Steve is very modest, but he believe me, and inside as well. I mean, we've done, unfortunately we won't be able to see it today, but we've cleaned it up. But when we started with this project, there were ATVers that were literally going through the station. They go in one door and out the other. And that's been eliminated. What you see here is, it's just amazing. So we've got a long ways to go, but we've really, a lot has happened. So Steve, I thank you for all your efforts, because really, without you, I don't know. But thank you certainly very much.
You have a question over there.
Oh,
Yeah,
sir.
quick one. Excuse me. With Amtrak getting into the mix, does that have anything any impact on what Jersey Transit was talking about putting a maintenance and way station here?
Interesting question. We don't know, because to your point, New Jersey Transit may not actually be technically involved with anything west of Andover, as it was originally intended. Because when they did talk about a study in 2008, I think it was, the federal study, the so-called FONSI, the finding of no significant impact, was done on the entire line between Port Morris and Scranton. One of the things they proposed, there would be no station in the sense of station stop here, but that yes, there would be a signal maintenance facility. The question would be, if New Jersey Transit is not technically going to be running out here, thinking they could run a train, but would they actually be providing service? Would they really need a signal maintenance facility? Would they really need this? We don't know. It's sort of a question, I think it's an open question right now. Don't know. Keith, thank you for that. And
Yeah, I want to just thank everyone again for coming out here. And Chuck, where can here's some good videos on YouTube. Where can we find you on YouTube?
YouTube.com/Lackawanna Cutoff.
A lot of historic videos, and you continue to produce them too. So thank you for coming. Take some pictures of the sign here, and you can check us out on Facebook, Lackawanna Cutoff Historical Committee, and we'll have future updates. If you have any questions, check us out there. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you.
The way that they were built.
Yeah. Somebody commented on